Welcome back to Not Another Tech Podcast, where we talk about all things Microsoft and techie, tinkery things. As always, I am joined by my co-hosts, Steve and Andy. Guys, how are you doing?
Hello. Yeah, thanks, you.
All good. All
It's
good.
Friday the 13th.
I know,
Lucky
I
for
did
some.
spot that. I thought, is it good to record a podcast on Friday the 13th? Is it good to do anything on Friday the 13th?
Yeah,
It's
car's in for its MOT, so that's
Oh,
going to be
shit.
expensive, I think.
Yeah, that's not going down well for you.
Yeah, it's the second one we've had in 2 months. 2026 is not off to a good
Yeah.
start.
No.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I did spot that as well. Oh dear. So we don't really have a topic today, at least not anything specific, but I thought we could just jump on, have a chat. If there was anything that we were sort of working with or dealing with at the moment, anything that kind of interested us. And yeah, I mean, one of the topics I think I wanted to just chat about, and I think we spoken about it before on another episode, is passkeys, because a kind of a hot topic at the moment is synced versus device bound, and I guess just interested to hear your thoughts, because there's a lot out there at the moment on socials around other people's opinions on it. So yeah,
I've actually not done much with the synced ones yet.
Okay.
All my passkeys have been device bound.
Same,
So
to be fair.
I haven't really looked at it. So since we did the last episode on passkeys and obviously taps, etc., I've not done much, and I've seen a lot of hype about the synced passkeys, but I've just not got round to looking at it because I think it'd be good, but is it actually really a best way to do it? Because my view is the whole idea of passkeys is it's tied to that one device, and it should always stick with that one device. So as soon as you go synced, it opens up a whole new can of worms, I think.
well, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think this is why I think it's quite a good discussion, right? Because I mean, I guess for anybody listening, it's worth kind of just clarifying the differences between them. Microsoft introduced synced passkeys, which effectively allows a user to create a passkey and store it in a third-party passkey provider. So whether that's like Apple iCloud Keychain, a passkey or password management tool like is it 1Password? I think is one of them.
There's loads, and they're all doing really well at the minute in the cybersecurity news feeds.
Yeah. We won't talk about LastPass. But yeah, I mean,
Still ongoing.
Synced passkeys allows users to create a passkey in one of these third-party providers. But obviously, because it's synced, it also means that when they want to use that passkey on another device, or they get a new phone, the passkey is available to them. They don't have to re-register it. Whereas a device bound is obviously tied to the hardware, it's tied to the device. If a user loses their phone or they get a new phone, they have to re-register that passkey. So from a end user perspective, I think it's pretty good. Do you know what I mean? I think it makes the process really easy.
I get you on that, but with old regular MFA, you had to do that anyway. If you get a new device, so you install the authenticator on a new phone, it will do everything that's probably, or I say probably, it does everything that's kind of regular authentication. So anything that it can sync to your Hotmail, for example, it will download. So anything that's got the rolling code, but your Entra accounts you have to reset up. That doesn't sync across. So my experience is from an M. Go on.
The Microsoft Authenticator app, it's not phishing resistant by default. So
Exactly.
so it's like, well, does it really matter? I mean, if you can have a phishing resistant passkey that's synced and available across all your devices, does it really matter that you have to recreate the push notification piece? I mean, the answer is probably no. And again, it depends on configuration and conditional access policies within your organization and whatnot. But I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about it. And then obviously Microsoft have brought in passkey profiles as well, which allows you to specify what type of passkey is allowed for, I guess, certain groups of users. So for example, you might want to say, well, the default passkey profile allows synced and device bound, but only admins. But admins can only use device bound, which is obviously because we've got that sort of attestation piece. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm interested in your thoughts. I kind of know what I think I've settled on my opinion on it.
It's a difficult one because the mechanism that allows it to be synced between the devices, is that infallible? Like, if I was to jump on a new device and I was to sign in and try and get myself my synced keys, what is protecting that process will be my question.
Exactly. So that's I guess that's the sort of the main point of discussion, right? Because it's like you as an organization aren't in control of that. If it's being stored in my iCloud keychain account, it's as good as the authentication for that account, right? If I don't have MFA on that, then but the idea here is that passkey adoption through Entra isn't great. The whole user onboarding piece for passkeys is pretty poor, if I'm honest. And I think the idea behind introducing synced passkeys was to lower the barrier for entry, make that process a little easier for users so that we can start moving towards phish-resistant authentication. So the trade-off is like we lose a little bit of that control insofar as where the passkey is stored, but actually we are making it easier for users to register passkeys. Therefore, we can then start enforcing phish-resistant authentication within the workplace. And you make a really good point insofar as if whatever passkey provider I'm storing it in isn't secure, that's not great. But this day and age, most of those passkey providers, you're talking Google, iCloud Keychain, they all enforce MFA by default anyway. So it's like, I think you'd be hard done to find one of those third-party passkey providers. Well, yeah, that doesn't have at least some level of MFA in order to get access to it anyway.
It's just the whole the seesaw and the fulcrum of convenience versus security, isn't it? And it's a case of we're trying to make it so more people adopt this, because you've got to remember historically for such a long time Microsoft has always focused on accessibility and collaboration first, security second, and that's now out of the box. The defaults are now gearing towards security rather than collaboration and stuff. So that shift's happening where Microsoft are like, okay, we now need to kind of stop focusing on accessibility and out of the box functions, and we need to make sure it's now secure by default. And this, to me personally, just on the face of it, I haven't looked into it, but as a layman, looks to me like we're bringing down that security a little bit to try and increase the accessibility and the ease of use and whatnot in order to try and get more people to use it. So yeah, I guess for me, multi-factor authentication has always been, and I will consider passkeys these as well, something you have, something you know, something you are, etc. And the whole device-bound passkey thing is, for me, it's the proof of something you have. You have this device, you're logging on from it. This device-bound passkey confirms to me that this is that device. Whereas by having it be able to sync between different things, I just think it opens the door for more moving parts, more variables, and ultimately with any sort of security solution, the more moving parts there are, the more likely somebody's going to find an exploit and a vulnerability in something, in some process. A bit like the whole browser password manager theft and stuff like that, stealing session tokens from the device rather than trying to catch them in the air or on the wire and stuff. It's the more things, the more moving pieces rather, the more bad guys will find things to do with them.
No, I think that. I guess, well, one of the things, because I've not looked at the synced passkeys, is how do you set it up in terms of what's the user experience? Do they still need a tap to set it up?
So they would still need a tap, I believe, in order to set it up. But only, I think that's only if they don't already have MFA set up, for example, because the requirement to register a passkey is you need MFA. Well, you need MFA. If you don't have MFA, then the first time you sign in,
then you need the tap.
But if you've already got MFA registered, then all you would do is authenticate, sign into your account, say you want to register a passkey, and then I'm fairly certain you get a choice now between, if you allow synced and device bound, you get an option, and you choose synced, and it basically allow you to then just go through the standard registration process.
Again, this is where I need to look into it a bit more. But my experience of that in the past is this comes down to your authentication strength, obviously, because you'll set your authentication strength to be phish resistant at that point, but you're also still running non-phish resistant as well, because you're just using number matching MFA. So it's that chicken and the egg. I mean, that's where my thought, where's the tap sit into this, because as a new user, I've always found it easy, because you just assign the tap and you set the tap validity to maybe just one-time use in 8 hours, for example. So the user gets it, and if they don't set up in time, they just have to call service desk and get a new tap. But in this case, if the user's already got MFA, my kind of experience again always been, we'll give them a tap, they can then register the new passkey on their device for a device-bound one, and then they're dropped into the new group that enforces phish resistant, because otherwise you've got some overlap in conditional access where you've got phish resistant and non-phish resistant. So is there an issue there, unless they've got Windows Hello for Business set up on their device, for example, already?
Well, yeah, so it depends. So I guess what you're saying here is, if someone's going to register a passkey, you would rather then, following that registration, make sure that you're enforcing passkey or phish resistant authentication only. And I guess, yes, that makes some sense. I don't think it should stop you from, and you would need to configure conditional access with authentication strengths, you're right, to make that happen. Yeah. But that shouldn't stop you from allowing passkeys in your current authentication strength, having people register them, because if you've got that system preferred MFA enabled,
I was just thinking
then that's going to default to passkey anyway. It's going to default to the strongest authentication method that you've got registered. So therefore, it would then default to passkey. Yes, you would still be potentially open to like downplay attacks. But
it's the default.
It's like baby steps, right? Baby steps.
Yeah. And perfection's the enemy of good enough, isn't it? And I get, just because it's not entirely infallible doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I get that.
I think that's Microsoft's play on it as well. I was listening to I think it was the latest EntraChat podcast with Merrill, and it had Daniel Bradley and Nathan McNulty on, and it was really interesting to listen to them because they both had differing opinions. So I think Daniel was was essentially saying, well, synced passkeys are a good thing because we want to promote people to use phishing resistant authentication. We want to make it as easy as possible for them. So kind of his argument was, well, we should have the default passkey profile, which is effectively applied to everybody, all users, that would allow synced and device bound. So that makes it easy for a user to register a passkey, and they can choose, do we want it to be synced or do we want it to be device bound? Whereas, and then enforcing device bound for admins, whereas Nathan McNulty kind of flipped it on its head, and he said, well, no, the way I would usually do it is I would say device bound is the default for everybody, but for those edge cases where device bound doesn't work, you have a separate passkey profile for users that allows them to use synced passkeys. And those edge cases are things like older Android devices where like passkeys aren't supported, or device bound passkeys aren't supported. Yeah, I know there's some Android devices that really struggle to register passkeys. And I guess people, because you get them, people within organizations that don't want to use the Microsoft Authenticator app because they're, for privacy reasons or whatever. In those scenarios, that's a great example of where you can still enforce phish resistant MFA, but do it via synced passkeys instead, because the user doesn't actually need the Microsoft Authenticator app at that point.
Yeah, I think a synced passkey sounds to me like a privilege. That's not me saying, if you use them, you're lucky or whatever, but that certainly seems like more of your edge case. I'm solving a problem with these versus device-bound ones, which in my opinion would be my default go-to, because my users aren't going to be changing devices every 2-3 minutes. The idea is I give a member of staff a laptop, it's theirs for the next 2-3 years or whatever the device's life cycle is. So yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with the latter there, which is if you don't have a reason to need synced ones, don't use them. Same for anything really.
But it also comes down to organization. Some organizations this may be ideal, but others who operate in an ultra secure environment, they wouldn't even consider it, and there's no need to consider it. So it kind of meets a gap that was there and addresses a need for some organizations. Yes, it creates perhaps a risk for others, but where it creates a risk, it's just not adopted, because it's not a case of you have to adopt sync passkeys. It's well, you can if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah.
So it means it's like you said earlier, Nate. It's more accessible now. So it does help with that adoption from that point of view. From a security perspective, I would still say, well, do you want sync passkeys to be available on somebody's home device? If I use Bitwarden, I used to use LastPass, but let's just say I ditched them a few years ago when security incident after security incident. But would I want my work synced passkey to my home device? Now, if I worked for a large global organization, probably not. But for a small independent, actually, convenience wins. But it's that whole thing of it lets people choose. I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the great thing is that at least now you have the options, and I think that's the key thing that Microsoft are trying to sort of show everybody is like, look, you've now got the option. If you've got those edge cases, you can do this sort of thing. And to your point of having a passkey, a corporate passkey stored in, available on a personal device, I love it. I think it's great. I'll be honest, I really do. I'm sort of slowly, I've spoken to you about it a few times, Andy. I'm slowly trying to move over to doing more on my MacBook. At Threatscape, rightly so, we enforce phish-resistant authentication, across the board.
Addresses that issue.
I can now connect to my Windows 365 PC from my Mac device, so I can actually work. I can be doing personal work from a laptop, but then when I need to, quickly and easily access a fully compliant containerized, device, and I authenticate to that with phishing-resistant authentication with a passkey stored in iCloud. So that the authentication process from the Windows app through to Windows 365 is just so seamless, and I don't even have to open my phone because I log in and it prompts me for the passkey. I've got Touch ID on the Mac OS. It takes me straight through and I'm in.
So you've synced your corporate passkey to your personal iCloud.
I've created a synced passkey. Yeah. So I've already got a device bound passkey that sits on Microsoft Authenticator, and that's been there for a while. But when synced passkeys became available, we made them available, and I just went into the security info page, registered a passkey, registered a synced one. You go through the process of scanning a QR code. So it scans it on my iPhone, and then it asks me, where do you want to store the passkey? And you just select iCloud or keychain, whatever it is, and it goes straight into there. So now it's available on all of my Apple devices. So now when I want to authenticate into Windows 365, I can use the passkey that's stored in iCloud keychain. So it's still phishing resistant authentication, but it's just so much more. It's just easy.
It's convenient.
It's just easy.
This actually goes on to what you and I talked about with the WebAuthn, with the Mac and the Windows app.
Yeah.
Which again, like I said to you, it's a real pain. If you then do a search for Windows app WebAuthn, it gives you all sorts of weird results because it just looks at Windows app in general, not the actual Windows app. But that would then mean, say I synced it to Bitwarden, it means I don't have that issue anymore, because at the moment, if I scan, or when I go to use my passkey on my Win365 device via my Mac or my USB one, it doesn't work because it just says, please insert device. Insert the device, it says an unknown error has occurred. If you use the QR code, it just doesn't do anything. Whereas now,
So you're saying when you're logged into your Windows 365 PC, if you have the third-party password management app or browser extension within the Windows 365, does it? Can you not use passkeys in that scenario then?
No, you may be able to now, but so one of the things when I was looking at privileged identity side of things, auth context. So you want to elevate to global admin. So say you're using, I mean, this is obviously touching in a bit of a grey area, because would you want a third party for GA? Absolutely not. But I'm just using it as an example, probably a bad one. But when I've logged into my Win365 Cloud PC or AVD session from my Mac, and I've got auth context enabled, it will then challenge me for my passkey.
Yes.
But because you're challenging within that session, use your fingerprint on your Mac, it won't work, because that's on the device itself. It's not on the cloud PC. And
Yes.
Windows Hello for Business won't work, because it works fine on a Windows device, but not on a Mac. So this is where that third party one could work, but it's a third party. Would you want to use a third party one for those accounts, for example?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, I mean, because I mean, technically, you could still use. I don't think there's anything stopping you from still using a synced passkey. Well, there isn't anything to stop you from using a synced passkey to elevate using auth context, because you can't actually differentiate between synced and device bound in auth context. It's just passkey.
Exactly.
You can specify specific passkeys via like AA GUIDs. But yeah. That's interesting, and I hadn't really thought about that. So if I want to elevate from within my Windows 365 device, I wouldn't be able to do that, because we'd be enforcing. I guess the other ways around that would be requiring a compliant device, maybe, because your Windows 365 device would be compliant.
Oh, exactly. It's one of those things. Or actually, if your Win365 device is being used as a POR, for example, you got that tag on it to say it's a POR. So therefore it can access, so therefore you can then elevate. So is auth context overkill in that respect? You know, I guess security will never say it's overkill, because they just like to make it as hard as possible. But at the same time, do you need it? I would argue probably not, because if you're only locking it down to that device, then you kind of covered all bases. But it's that thing, actually, for me, those sync passkeys would work in other areas. So if I log on to a cloud PC via my Mac, and it asks me for my passkey, if it's there in Bitwarden, for example, it then means, well, actually, I don't need to worry about scanning the QR code on my phone and worrying about that, because it doesn't work on that. It will just let me in straight away. So it almost answers that issue. But from other examples, like a POR, is it a good idea or bad idea? Again, comes down to the use case.
I think you're right. I think there's always going to be a conversation to kind of have there, and it's going to be very specific to the organization. But it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but it sounds like the two of you are kind of more inclined to say, well, actually, device bound is what we would consider to be the default, and we would layer on synced passkeys for those edge cases. Is that kind of what you guys are?
That's what I'd swing towards. Default device, and then use by use case, synced if needed. I mean, from a security point of view, you'd have to scrutinize it to make sure it's really absolutely necessary, I would say, because if you got it on your personal device, and yes, these third-party apps, I mean, Bitwarden every 30 days asks me to re-authenticate to it, or if I've rebooted my machine, I have to type in my password. But say I leave my PC somewhere, not that I would, and it's unlocked, and I go away to the bathroom or something in a coffee shop, it's exposed, and it's the risk there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just creating scenarios that probably would never happen, but well, let's face it,
no, I think it's a valid point. I think at the end of the day, I think, Steve, you mentioned it before. It's about, it's the age old, someone signing into their personal Google Chrome account on a work device and then storing all of their corporate credentials in that profile. That's how, I can't remember which organization it was, but that was one of the organizations who got
Cisco, mate.
pwned. Yeah. I think they stored like VPN credentials in a personal Google account or something like that. So, like, I get it. I totally get it. It's just, I think for me, the likelihood is a lot lower than it used to be, and it depending on the password provider as well. Like you gave a good example there of like if you were to walk away, and they could potentially get access to those passkeys or credentials that are stored within that if you left your device open. You don't get that with iCloud Keychain. So even with the MacBook open, every time I want to access the Passwords app, which is the credential provider, I have to do Touch ID to actually open it in the first place, even though my laptop's already unlocked and I'm sat working on it. And I don't know whether other passkey providers and credential providers, kind of do something similar, but I just think that they're that good now that I think it's less of a risk. But I totally understand and appreciate your points, and I think they're really valid points. And I think it's one of those where it's going to have to be a case by case basis. It's interesting to hear your opinions on it though, because I think I sit on the other side. I get it, and I think your approach makes total sense. But just from what I've seen of organizations typically wanting to adopt passkeys, but hitting all of those roadblocks, I'm sort of more inclined to say, well, actually, why don't we set synced and device bounders? That's the default. We're going to allow it for everybody, but for those users that are considered more privileged, admin accounts, VIP users, C-suite users, whatever you want to call them, they have to use device bound.
See, for admin accounts, I'd go physical passkey all day, every day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's an interesting one, and I think there is probably a level of old school dinosaur set in his ways, doesn't trust new fancy technology sort of thing going on. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, that just sounds. But when you think about the mechanisms at play for securing these, like you say with yours, it needs biometrics before it will even open the app and let you begin to do it. Windows Hello for Business does the same. It needs to see my face before it'll let me use a stored passkey on my device. I understand the mechanisms. I think there's just a little bit of old school skepticism at play with, well, it's gonna break somewhere, isn't it? Somebody's gonna find a way through, kind of thing. Just touching back on what you mentioned earlier with regards to users still not wanting to install stuff on the phone and derailing it a little bit from passkeys and stuff. MG, the guy who created, invented, and produces the OMG cable, had a really interesting Twitter thread at the weekend with regards to, and I'm not 100% sure on the details, but I believe an American company has been hacked by, I assume, Iranian threat actors, and apparently have managed to wipe all corporate devices of corporate data and personal data. And I haven't gone through the entire thread, but given the amount of news that this is getting, from my personal opinion, appears to be misinformed news, in the sense of just because your device is enrolled into Intune doesn't mean your corporation can wipe all your personal data and stuff. I would expect the amount of people who are apprehensive about installing stuff on their personal devices to go up after this news is kind of broken, because it was all over Twitter on my news feed at the week earlier this week.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the amount of people weighing in on the conversation who clearly don't work blue team or sysadmin side of the equation, and just have an inherent distrust for MDM, assuming that it still in 2026 just gives an organization unequivocal admin rights to your entire device. And you could see in the comments on Twitter with people going, well, hang on a minute, how does this work with Android work profiles? Have they broken out of the work profile and into the personal profile? None of the people making the claim MDM equal bad could answer those questions, because you could tell they weren't aware of the fact that Android has work profile sort of containerization going on. So I thought it was interesting, and I wondered if you two had any thoughts on it, or if you'd read any of the news about it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen something. So, well, we've got a kind of a work chat where, being in the industry that we're in, probably not surprising, we drop links into news articles relating to threat actors and all the rest of it. And I did see something about, what was the organization that you're referring to? Because I've seen one here where it was actually I think it was an Irish-based organization were hit with a cyber attack to an Iranian-backed group. Yeah. And this one is here saying it was known as a wiper attack. So same as what you were just saying there, really. The organization was Striker.
Oh, Striker. Yeah, sorry, I assumed it was an American organization. So my mistake there. Yeah, Striker. Severe attack that wiped systems, including personal data from personal devices. Which, how does that even happen?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one because I mean for things like, do you know what? It's been a while since I last looked at it, but I'm fairly certain it used to be the case that if you enrolled a mobile into, well, I'll tell you how. If you enroll a mobile phone into Intune,
You got
and
full
then which will
capability.
I mean, I'll take an iPhone as an example.
Yeah.
If you went and enrolled it into Intune via company portal or whatever, it would be enrolled as a personal ownership initially. When it gets enrolled as a personal device, certain elements of the UI get grayed out, one of which is wipe the device, right?
Yeah.
So you can't actually wipe the whole thing. All you need to do as an admin is change
that.
the ownership
Yeah.
to administrator, and then it unlocks all of those additional options. So I guess that's how.
And does that still permit, even for personally enrolled devices that have created an Android work profile? And I'm sorry, I've jumped back to Android on you.
So I don't know. I don't know is the honest answer. I think dependent on it. Well, it would depend on the enrollment profile used. If it was personally owned with work profile, then I mean, yes, I think I would expect it to only remove the work profile side of things. But honestly, I'm not 100% sure. And it depends. They might have had, and they've referred to it as has wiped personal data. That could be that the organization is giving out phones that are corporate owned, fully managed, but those users have just stored personal data on them, which is then when they've been wiped that they've lost data. So, and then you got to kind of read between the lines, and there's a lot of guesswork there in what they've said.
Yeah, well, there's a paragraph here taken from a Reddit source, so take that with a pinch of salt with what you will, but it says that users have reported that they have lost all personal data from personally owned devices that were enrolled, and they are now unable to access personal emails and Teams. But yeah, I know why I thought it was in the US, to be fair. So they're a company that are based in the US, Australia, Ireland. So yeah, they're all over. It was the source that my news was coming from. They were saying it was a US-based company. But yeah, it seems like a big global organization. India, Ireland, Australia. But yeah, obviously Reddit sources, so take them with a pinch of salt. But yeah, all personal data from personal devices. So I guess that's going to put the fear of God in some people with regards to enrolling personal devices. Because I did it ages ago with like Exchange Active Sync. That used to indiscriminately wipe the whole device. And I've done that a few times by mistake, many moons ago. But I would have thought, or I would have liked to have thought, that if it's a containerized work profile, the only management the organization has over that is in what lives in that specific work profile, not the entire device.
And I think, again, I think it depends on the platform. It depends on the enrollment profile that's being used. But I guess fundamentally, if you are having MDM, it is mobile device management. That you've got access management over the device. Like you're giving that, you're giving that ownership and capability over to a organization. And like I say, there's a lot of grey areas there depending on the configuration.
That's where you'd go for device register as opposed to device enroll.
Yeah, and again, it depends on your requirements, because you're not going to you're not going to be able to satisfy device compliance if it's only registered. But again, that's like, what do you have to adhere to from a regulatory perspective? What do you actually need to give access to from an end user perspective? Like all of that kind of stuff comes into play. I did notice that that Striker attack was impacted the company's Microsoft environment. So it was their 365 environment that they managed to.
Doesn't necessarily mean they were using Intune, though, does it? They could have been using a third-party MDM solution. Correct. But I mean, safe to assume potentially Intune was in the equation. But yeah, it's just interesting because the amount of people that were weighing in on it and were like, well, hang on a minute. Because you could tell every time a sysadmin popped up who worked with Microsoft, he was like, why are they not using MAM? Why is MAM not being used? Why are they using, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously the people who spend their time on the red team, the offensive team, who are not necessarily savvy with the Microsoft stack, we're like, well, it's MDM, isn't it? The whole device is always enrolled. That's just how it works. And it's like, not always, but yeah, it was just interesting because obviously it's not my area of expertise either. But I just thought it was funny to weigh in on. And like I say, I think it's going to come up in conversation more with I ain't putting my personal device on there. I think we've taken great strides forward with no, it only gives us access to the corporate data and this, that, and the other. And now it's taking 12 steps back, I think, or potentially will do.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one, and it's a good, but at the same time, it's a good opportunity to go, well, hey, look at this other way of doing things, which is MAM, and that gives us control over the applications, and from a corporate perspective, again, it depends on what you need to give access to and those kind of regulatory requirements that you've got. But again, there are ways around that, dependent on the configuration and those requirements. You can make MAM work for you in those situations as well. So yeah.
And anything you can't, just consider it out of scope.
yeah.
They're not in scope. Don't worry about those. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, if anything, it just proves once again and again that it's not a one size fits all solution, is it? Everything needs to be. It's not. It's the difference between buying a suit off the shelf and going and getting one tailored. So I've been told. I've never owned a tailored suit in my life, but I understand security as a concept is obviously we need to be tailoring it to everything that the customer needs to do. But yeah, no, I just saw that pop up, and again, the whole MDM was bad thing. I thought, joy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I derailed it a bit there. Apologies.
No, it was good. I think it was a really good place to kind of start, thinking about wrapping things up as well for the episode. Really, I mean, I was kind of hoping to cover a few other bits and pieces, but it was a really good discussion around Passkeys. It's good to get you guys' thoughts on it. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's probably a good place to wrap up. We'll maybe touch on those other bits in the next episode. But I'm kind of pleased to say the numbers on the podcast are rising. I've got quite a few people that are listening to us talk shit for 45 minutes, which I guess is good. So maybe just take this as an opportunity to say, thank you to all of the listeners and people that are interested in hearing us talk about, Microsoft security and all the rest of it. And I guess if there's anyone that's out there within the community that wants to join us, and feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, and we can try and get something sorted. But I guess until then, we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Yeah.
Cool.
Appreciate you all. Thanks for watching.
Take it easy.
Lovely. Cheers, mate.
See you.